Our facilities generate a lot of information, especially pertaining to our GFSI schemes and the evidence of compliance. There are three big challenges or buckets of challenges that I see with managing all this auditable data. One is that the data is scattered. There's no single source of truth. There are a lot of folks and inputs across all of our departments in the facility. So lots of people generating lots of records and interacting in a lot of ways. We have fragmented record repositories, which means all of these interactions and all these records and all these things that are happening end up in a lot of different places. So it can be a challenge for people to pull these pieces of the puzzle together to demonstrate compliance. That auditor is sitting in the conference room and they say, hey, let's see the records for January 3rd for this production run. The team's going to go run around and try to find that as efficiently as they can. You can have a window of preparation and maybe have some boxes or binders ready to go, but that auditor can pull an audible and go look at anything. So being able to access that quickly, that's a challenge, and finding it in an efficient way without having folks just tearing through the plants, it can be a real challenge. Another big bucket is that this data is static. It requires manual engagement at every stage. Somebody has to go and get the paperwork. They've got to fill it out. They've got to turn that in. Somebody's got to then review it and stamp it and sign it. And then they've got to file that. All those pieces, this passing the baton and this journey that record is on, it takes a lot of time, and it's a lot of touches and risks at each of those touch points for something to get lost or something to get missed. The data doesn't know if it's missing something or if it's inaccurate, and it sure won't ask for help. It isn't very often that a piece of paper, unless there's a big blank spot where we know something should be, where you know you've got a gap, where you know something was filled out incorrectly, or it wasn't done on time. Another big challenge is that the data isn't connected to anything. So having a piece of paper that has a temperature check or a metal detector check or some other type of compliance evidence, it doesn't know that it belongs with this element of the SQF code or that element of FSSC 22000. It just knows that it's a piece of paper and it's existing, and that's it. So it means that humans have to engage with all these pieces to provide context when that auditor walks in. And then when that paper is generated or that record's generated, it only serves as evidence. It isn't actionable data as it sits on a piece of paper. What this leads to is that third big bucket, which is invisible data. This data hides in the file boxes or the filing cabinets until an audit or a shredder calls for it. Whether we pass that 3-year window or whatever we have defined and we're going to send it to the shredder because we don't need it any longer, or it just sits there hoping it doesn't get called upon. It's typically only seen as valuable for audits and not for the goldmine that it is with all these insights and data, especially when we start to aggregate and see trends in our systems and our performance. Being compliant is important, but being compliant and trending out of compliance is a big insight, and it's nice to catch and see that before we fall off the cliff. Systems, digital systems specifically, can help to see this immediately. If we're doing weight checks or temperature checks at a fryer or an oven, and those temperature checks fall within that compliant band, but if they start to trend up and we have 2 or 3 trending up and we're not out of compliance yet, but if that operator doesn't get an alert or the system doesn't know that it's heading towards trouble, we're gonna drive off the cliff. So it's nice to have systems that can help action that data and give us insights before we have problems. Another challenge is that we're unable to track and trace changes in other departments. Somebody in the receiving department may do something and they're like, why do we always do this? Let's change it. Well, they may not know that that was a requirement buried in some GFSI scheme or some regulatory scheme that we have to comply with. And even though it seems like unnecessary data, it's critical to the quality team. Now, we have document control practices in place to prevent these things, but people can make changes to processes without necessarily updating SOPs or passing training along or updating records. They just start or stop doing something and all of a sudden we're out of compliance and didn't know it.